What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today, as I always do on Tuesdays, to bring you the biggest trade targets in fantasy football following the Week 9 games going into Week 10. Basically, what we're doing, if you guys are new around here, first of all, hit the subscribe button. We are almost at 8,000 subscribers as I record this today. Hopefully, we can get there by the end of the day. Like and comment while you're down at the bottom of the video. But essentially, what we're doing is getting a discount on elite fantasy assets, taking advantage of people's frustrations when they put these guys into their lineups and they don't perform to what they think they should be performing to. We get a recency bias discount, and that's exactly what we're trying to exploit. We're trying to get these elite assets at a 80%, 90% on the dollar so that we can take advantage of what they truly are, not what their perception is by their current fantasy manager. But before I get into this, quick review of what we talked about last week, just to make sure I'm not, talking out my ass. I know what I'm talking about here. Nick Chubb and Dalvin Cook were two of the guys that I talked about. Nick Chubb, of course, had a monster game. He did actually just test positive for COVID this morning, but nonetheless, he looks to be paying off. Dalvin Cook did have a pretty solid game as well. Terry McLaurin was on bye, so nothing really to report new there, but he is still a guy that I'm buying low on. Chase Claypool, Jarvis Landry, and Emmanuel Sanders were guys that I talked about. If you needed some more depth wide receivers or some starting caliber flex options, then those guys are still guys that I'd be targeting. Neither of them really had any good games too, so you could probably still go out and acquire those guys. So before we get into the first guy on the list, we're going to hit the intro. So, DeAndre Swift, the number one trade target that we're going to talk about today. This is one that will depend league to league. So, as I talked about in the past with guys like Cooper Kupp, anytime they have bad games, you can get a 90 cents on the dollar type of discount on these guys. So, the sharper the league, the harder it will be to acquire a guy like DeAndre Swift. The more casual leagues will devalue Swift inherently because he plays for the Detroit Lions. But the reality is he is their entire offense. So DeAndre Swift, 57 targets, currently leads all running backs and hasn't had a single game with less than 5 targets this season. High value touches are king, right? We hear the term volume is king all the time, but high value volume is what's actually king. The difference between a guy like Mike Davis, who gets low value volume, and a guy like DeAndre Swift, even though the volume opportunity-wise is similar, Swift gets the targets, he gets the red zone looks, he gets the 2-minute drill looks, the long down and distance, all the stuff that we care about for a fantasy running back, and Mike Davis gets the 3rd and 2s, the 1st and 10 carries that don't usually amount to a lot of expected fantasy usage. So they bring in Jamal Williams for the 3rd and 2s. They keep DeAndre Swift fresh. The Lions just need to not get blown out. And DeAndre Swift has the potential to have a 20-point game each and every week. As you guys can see on the screen, DeAndre Swift is seeing elite usage for the running back position. He is up over 70% of the snaps in 4 straight games. And the week we saw him before the bye, they got blown out to the Eagles, and he was still on the field over 70% of the time. Yes, Jamal Williams was out, but this is still a guy that is the primary back for his team, running over 70% of the routes, commanding a 24% targets per route run on the season, gets most of the inside the 5 attempts, gets all of the long down and distance 2-minute drill snaps. As I mentioned, this is a guy that people know is a good asset, but because he was on bye and because he disappointed the week before his bye, you might be able to get a small buy low window on him right now, and he's going to help you towards the stretch run. Now, everybody's going to focus on the fact that DeAndre Swift also doesn't have an easy schedule the rest of the season. But like I said, I do not care what DeAndre Swift's schedule is because he is getting a minimum of 5 targets every game so far this season, leads all running backs in targets, so he doesn't actually depend on his schedule. He is completely matchup proof. He's performed in some tough matchups already, and I have no concerns with him going forward. And as you guys can see on the screen, you can get a small discount on DeAndre Swift. With DeAndre Swift, I view him as a top 8 running back rest of the season. That is how I view DeAndre Swift. So if I have to pay anything less than a top 8 running back price, I'm going to take that value every time. If you can get him straight up for Mike Williams or straight up for Chris Godwin, I am willing to do that. If you can use DeAndre Swift and CeeDee Lamb in a package deal, trade away Aaron Jones and Amari Cooper, I'm willing to do that as well. Again, I highly doubt you're going to be able to get him for a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. I'm not really sure what that guy's doing, but if you can get DeAndre Swift at any kind of discount in your league, it's all going to depend on your league. If they view DeAndre Swift as risky because he plays for the Lions, they might shut him down or use him less or whatever because they're out of the playoff race. That is not going to happen. They're not going to do that. That's not how NFL coaches think. They're not fantasy players. So that is my kind of spiel on DeAndre Swift. He is a guy that I think you can get 90 cents on the dollar right now, and he's really going to help you in the stretch run of the playoffs. If you wanted to do a 2-for-1 type of deal, let's say you have Elijah Mitchell, who's performing really well right now, or you have, James Conner, who just got a big time upgrade to his situation with Chase Edmonds now out. you can take one of those guys and add in a small receiver. Maybe you throw in, Chase Claypool or Emmanuel Sanders or Jarvis Landry, somebody like that, and you can get up to a DeAndre Swift. That is a move I'm absolutely willing to make. So moving on to the second and third trade targets of the video. They are both on the same team. They both play wide receiver, and they both play for America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. Both of these guys have disappointed relative to expectations so far this year, but the usage will correct the poor fantasy performances. These guys are the definition of positive regression candidates. And the reason is because this Cowboys offense is a high value offense, right? They have a great quarterback. They have great weapons, great offensive line, et cetera, et cetera. But on top of that, they're operating at a top 2 rate in neutral situation pace right now. Only the Arizona Cardinals are running a faster offense than what the Cowboys are running right now. And they are running a top 12 neutral pass rate over the course of the whole season and a top 10 neutral pass rate over the course of the last 5 games. So what we're seeing early in the season, we saw them shift towards more of like a run heavy approach. But this year, they have been a lot more pass heavy in the last couple of weeks or so. So I want to see that continue. And I think that affects CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper directly, of course. With Lamb, he's garnered 34 targets over the last 4 games and 32 targets for Amari Cooper. That kind of volume and this kind of offense from a quarterback that they have is going to win leagues, and they can be acquired for very cheap right now because of the inconsistencies. And the other main reason why I'm acquiring these guys is their schedule. Their schedule is absolutely juicy for their entire Cowboys offense, their ability to score points. I know they laid an egg last week, right? And that is why I'm buying low on these guys, because they laid a very public, terrible game out on the line where CeeDee Lamb disappointed, Amari Cooper disappointed. We had, Miles Turner. I don't even remember who the guy scored all the touchdowns were, but these guys disappointed, and you can get them for a discount for that reason. As you guys can see on the screen, they have Atlanta this week. Then they have the Chiefs. Then they have the Raiders. Then they have the Saints, the Washington football team, the Giants, Washington again. They have the Washington football team, the single worst defense in the NFL at defending wide receivers for fantasy purposes. They have them twice in the playoffs, 2 times. So this, like I said, this is a wide receiving core, these 2 guys that are going to be extremely undervalued right now because of what they did last week. And they can present a huge amount of upside towards the end of the season because their schedule is so easy. We're looking at trades that we've seen right now from CeeDee Lamb. As you guys can see on the screen, a trade like the one that I have circled here, a guy like Darrell Henderson and Jerry Jeudy, you can get in return CeeDee Lamb and Josh Jacobs. I'm making moves like that every day of the week. Any kind of package deal where you can get these guys at a discount. This one's CeeDee Lamb and DeAndre Swift for Cooper and Jones, like that deal as well. CeeDee Lamb and Joe Mixon in return for like Derrick Henry and Michael Pittman Jr. Again, Derrick Henry probably isn't even going to play the rest of the season. Another one that I like there, CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. So you get the CeeDee Dak stack in return for Ayuk, Jalen Hurts, and Adrian Peterson. Again, people are going to be down on these guys because of their recent performances. And some of the ones we've seen for Amari Cooper straight up for Cordero Patterson, straight up for Mike Gesicki, straight up for basically for Kyler Murray, Mike Evans and David Montgomery for Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper. These deals are absolutely free cash. If you guys can pull off some kind of trades like this, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb will win leagues down the stretch. If you guys can acquire these guys for cheap right now, these are top 20 receivers the rest of the season. And you know it's coming from me and not from Danny, so you know it isn't biased. So moving on to a guy that I was lower on coming into the season. He is the 4th trade target of this video, but he is in a phenomenal position, and that's James Robinson. Another undervalued asset that can be had right now for a couple reasons. Just like DeAndre Swift, there is a stigma around James Robinson because he plays for Jacksonville. People don't like watching Red Zone and watching the Jacksonville Jaguars carry their fantasy running back. It's a bad team. It's a bad offense. But when you're a full-blown workhorse, it does not matter. He is getting everything in this backfield that he needs to be a back-end RB1 the rest of the season. If he played for a better offense, he'd probably be a high-end RB1, but he doesn't play for a high-end offense. That's kind of just the cards we're dealt. So he is a back-end RB1. As you guys can see on the screen, he's a guy that consistently gets 80-ish% of the snaps, over 50, 60, 70, 80% of the carries, a lot of the routes, 83%, 56%, and 67% over the past couple games before he suffered the heel injury that he's been dealing with. And the heel injury on that right now doesn't concern me one bit. They've already come out and announced Urban Meyer expects him to play this week. A heel injury is not something that usually would hold back a running back. I'm not really concerned about it whatsoever. Another tough matchup this week, though, against the Indianapolis Colts. So if you did want to wait a week, he might have another down game this week. But after that, it is absolutely smooth sailing. 6 of his next 7 games come against defenses, allowing top 12 adjusted fantasy points to running backs. The Texans, Jets, and Patriots during the fantasy playoffs. For those of you guys that are 7-2, 8-1, 9-0, this is a guy that you can acquire to help bolster your fantasy playoff run with a guy that has a phenomenal schedule down the stretch. And as you guys can see on the screen. You can get this guy for a discount. James Robinson and Emmanuel Sanders acquired for Eli Mitchell and Adam Thielen. Give me the J-Rob side of that. James Robinson was acquired for Marquise Brown, Michael Carter. Bit of a closer trade, but I would prefer J-Rob there. And these ones that I have circled at the bottom here, this is what kind of exemplifies what James Robinson's value is to me right now. James Robinson and Darren Waller in exchange for Zeke Elliott and Jared Cook. Again, I would make a trade like that any day of the week. That's like 2 buy low candidates you're getting in exchange for a guy like Zeke Elliott, James Robinson, and Robert Woods in exchange for Aaron Jones. I would make that deal as well. So he is another guy that I'm going to be going after. The final guy in the buy low section of this video is going to be David Montgomery. David Montgomery didn't even take one game to get back to full strength. Usually, my sentiment along running backs coming off of multi-week injuries is that they're going to be limited to some degree. I expected David Montgomery to be a 50, 60% of the snaps type of running back this week. That wasn't the case at all. He got right back into his full workload, 85% of the snaps, 73% of the routes in total. Another running back that fits right into the James Robinson, Darrell Henderson, Leonard Fournette tier of the back-end RB1, high-end RB2 types for the rest of the season. He is coming off of an injury, which will make people hesitant to go out and trade for him, but he's been a very durable running back to this point in his career. I'm not really worried about the injury whatsoever. If they were worried, they wouldn't give him a huge workload his first game back. The thing about Montgomery also that is something that's I think is really underrated is that to this point in the season and even last year, he has never really played in a good offense. And I'm not saying that Justin Fields is going to be phenomenal down the stretch, but we have seen glimmers of hope that Justin Fields is getting better each and every week that he starts at quarterback. Yesterday, last night against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which was granted a very tough matchup for Justin Fields, big time mismatch for his offensive line going up against Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and all those guys up front. He had a 90.5 PFF grade. He had an 88.5 PFF passing grade, which marks 3 straight weeks where Justin Fields has improved as a passer. So if Montgomery suddenly has a quarterback that can actually affect his team's winning outcome in a positive way, then that is going to increase his scoring opportunities. It's going to make sure that they have positive game scripts and they're not playing from behind. It's going to make their offensive line play a little bit better, knowing that they're going to be winning games a little bit more often. So if the Montgomery owner is hurting for wins, and they probably are, because if they have David Montgomery, they probably drafted him pretty high. They could have some other injuries here and there. They could be like a 4-5 team, a 3-6 team. If you can go out and acquire David Montgomery from a team like that, I'm telling you right now, you're going to be able to get him at a discount. He's on bye this week. It's another week of rest and is a perfect stash for a late season playoff run for those of you, like I said, that are 7-2, 8-1, 9-0, something like that. Even if you're 6-3, he gets Minnesota, he gets Seattle, and he gets the Giants during the fantasy playoffs. And he is back to his full workload. And hopefully by then, Justin Fields is fully acclimated to his starting quarterback role and can continue to improve. So moving from the buy lows, let's get into the sell highs. And I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but Elijah Mitchell is still a sell high candidate for me. I'm doubling down, not because I don't believe in Elijah Mitchell. As always, he is a good back. He is somebody I believe in as a back end RB2, mid RB2 at best. But what we're looking for is what can we get for this guy, right? I'm actively shopping Elijah Mitchell because what I believe right now, based on the things that have happened in my own leagues and things that I've seen on Twitter, is that his perceived value is higher than his actual value. Take the Odell poster behind me right now, right? The signed Odell picture behind me. I paid $110 for it, right? If somebody is willing to give me $200 for it, why wouldn't I sell the poster, right? That it's simple logic to me. Why Elijah Mitchell, I believe, is about $110 back or like a mid to late RB2. But people are willing to give you back-end RB1 value for this guy. I've seen it happen in my own leagues. He was traded for Saquon Barkley in one of my leagues with another piece thrown in on top of Elijah Mitchell. So that is kind of why I'm still shopping Elijah Mitchell. It's nice to see him get the passing game involvement, but the Jeff Wilson return does still have me concerned. He didn't get any usage in his first game back, but I still think he's going to be mixed in. JaMychal Hasty is still there. They're still using him as well. I have Kyle Shanahan trust issues because, as we know, the definition of insanity is doing things over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, buying into Kyle Shanahan running backs has never worked in the past. I don't think it's going to work now. And again, I'm not saying that Elijah Mitchell is going to be a bum the rest of the season. I think he is a mid to late RB2, but his downside risk is a mid RB3, which is no longer startable in your roster. And right now you can sell him, as you guys can see on the screen, for great options. You can sell him straight up for guys like Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook and DJ Moore and Antonio Gibson and Christian McCaffrey in kind of package deals. So if you have Elijah Mitchell, float out some of these trades. Go after Christian McCaffrey's, Dalvin Cook's, Saquon Barkley's, elite running backs, and throw in a Robert Woods on top of it and see if you can get it done. I'm willing to bet you that you probably can get it done because it's happened in my own league. And if you want to float out straight 1-for-1s, try selling Elijah Mitchell for the guys that I talked about already, the two Dallas wide receivers, or for DeAndre Swift. You might be able to do it so far. So that's kind of what I'm thinking with Elijah Mitchell. If you can sell him for David Montgomery as well, maybe you can go out and acquire Terry McLaurin. Maybe you can go out and acquire DJ Moore if you still believe in him. So that's kind of my thoughts with Elijah Mitchell. Again, it's going to depend league to league. I'm not selling him in every single format because I think he's going to be bad. I'm selling him because I think his value is perceived higher than what his actual value is. Anytime that is the case, you want to be selling. So number 2 is Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon, this one's a projection on my part, of course. It's not likely that Javonte Williams takes over this backfield the rest of the season, but it is your downside risk with Melvin Gordon. And right now, Melvin Gordon, there's a couple factors in play. 1, the Broncos are not going to make the playoffs. They're not a playoff team. And 2, their bye is coming up. We've seen the post-bye rookie bump already affect Michael Carter. And Javonte Williams just had his first 100-yard rushing game. Looks fantastic each and every week. Who's to say they don't install him as the primary running back post-bye week in week 11? Melvin then becomes the 40% snap share running back, and he's a lot less valuable than he is right now. This is not a fantasy player's dream. Also, this isn't because I own Javonte Williams that I want this to happen. It actually is feasibly likely to happen because of what we've seen in the past with rookie running backs and because it makes sense for real football first. It always has to make sense for real football first. Melvin Gordon is a free agent next year. Javonte looks to be the feature back in this offense going forward. Why not install him at the end of his rookie year so we can get a taste of that feature back role heading into next season? Could it backfire? Sure. But it's all about what you can get for him as always. If you can't get, back end RB2 value, high end RB2 value, then don't make that move. Obviously, if nobody's willing to give you anything for Melvin Gordon, don't trade him. But if you can get a package deal like some of the ones that you have circled right here, Melvin Gordon, Mike Williams, T. Higgins, get up to a Christian McCaffrey. Melvin Gordon and Jalen Waddle, get up to a Darren Waller. Or if you can make a 1-for-1 trade, like I said, Melvin Gordon for Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, whatever. If you can make a move like that, that's absolutely what I'm looking to do. And like I said, lateral moves are okay with Melvin Gordon because you're mitigating some of your downside risk. If you sell Melvin Gordon for Mike Williams, they're probably pretty even in value when you think about the running back value versus the wide receiver value. But what you're getting is you're mitigating your downside risk with a guy like Mike Williams because he's in a better offense. He's not at risk of losing his job. So that is kind of my thoughts on Melvin Gordon, a guy I'm looking to shop if I have him, but I'm not forcing a trade just because I think he needs to be sold. He's a guy that I want to gauge the value of before I sell him. And another one, they all kind of fit into this same kind of bucket this week in the sell highs, but Tyler Lockett. This one is very simple. Russell Wilson's coming back. It's very common knowledge that everybody knows that. Anybody who has Sleeper downloaded on their phone, if you guys have your league on Sleeper, people know that Russell Wilson is coming back. Ergo, if you've been holding Tyler Lockett this whole season, you know how inconsistent he was even before Russell Wilson's injury. So people will pay up thinking that they're getting a buy low candidate in Tyler Lockett, and it's a sneaky trade target. But the reality of the situation is that you're getting a inconsistent wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 at best, in my opinion. That is how I view Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf is the number 1 in this offense. It's still a run-first offense. They're still not going to let Russ cook if anybody thinks that's going to happen. I bet you can get either of the Cowboys wide receivers straight up for Tyler Lockett right now. Maybe you can get Terry McLaurin. Maybe you can get DJ Moore straight up for Tyler Lockett just based on Russell Wilson coming back. That's literally all the information that some people are going to need to start sending out offers for Tyler Lockett. They're going to convince themselves that Tyler Lockett still has this untapped potential, but we know what he is at this point. He's inconsistent. He's going to be like that the rest of his career probably. So Tyler Lockett and Ezekiel Elliott were traded straight up for Christian McCaffrey. Tyler Lockett and Michael Carter for Saquon Barkley. Tyler Lockett and Adam Thielen for Devontae Adams. If you can use Tyler Lockett in a package deal to go up and get a stud piece like any of the guys that I just mentioned, absolutely go out and do that, because anybody who's had Tyler Lockett the last couple of weeks knows that he has been just completely uninvolved in the offense, has not been good for your fantasy roster. So those are all the trade targets for today. As always, if you guys did enjoy this video, please go down to the bottom and hit the like button. And while you're down there, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get to 8,000 subscribers by the end of the day today. Let's see if we can do it by the end of the day. Comment any of your thoughts down below as well. If you guys want access to my weekly rankings, rest of season rankings, dynasty rankings, Danny's weekly rankings, dynasty rankings, rest of season rankings, you can go to the website. One of 3 ways that you can get them. Peace out, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.